Welcome to Around the Girdle Earth, the podcast where Dartmouth stories come to life. I'm your host, Yovany Jerez, class of '03, and on each episode, we sit down with members of the Dartmouth alumni community to explore the moments, the mentors, and the memories that shaped them from the green all the way to the great unknown. So, whether you graduated last year or decades ago, these conversations offer a window into the journeys we have taken and the common threads that connect us all. So grab your favorite drink, step into the story, cue up the nostalgia, and let's wonder together. Today, my very special guest is Kenny Reyes, class of 2000. Kenny and I actually did meet in person when I was a freshman. He was a senior. So, Kenny, glad that we reconnect. This was a good excuse to reconnect. Why don't you kick us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background before Dartmouth?
Okay, well, Giovanni, thank you so much for having me. I love that you're doing this, especially during Hispanic Heritage Month. Greetings from Camden, New Jersey, a town that was probably most influential in my development and my growth. Everything, a town that's as beautiful as it is complex. But man, it informed everything that happened afterwards. So I'm excited to jump in and tell you my story, how I got to Dartmouth, and everything that happened after Dartmouth. Yeah.
Tell us, so did you grow up in Jersey, or what's your cultural background? Let's start there.
Okay. Yeah. Listen, you got me here because one of my passions is storytelling, Giovanni, and you got me all giddy now. So yeah, let me tell you my story. So I love hearing stories too, but I love telling stories. So I am actually from the Puerto Rican countryside, a little town called Cayey. For me, it was the most beautiful, picturesque. Imagine like mountains, trees, guava trees, tamarind trees, pigs, chickens. It was just like beautiful. The first 5 years of my life in Cayey, Puerto Rico were absolutely amazing. Like, it brings me joy whenever I think of that. Then when I was five, my mom decided to move me, my sister, to the mainland, and she chose Camden, New Jersey. Now, I told you earlier, super influential, probably the most influential city or place that I lived in terms of who I am as a person. But I remember being five and being angry. Like, why would my mom take away this beautiful paradise that we're from and bring us, frankly, to this what's the word that I'm looking for? Because I have so much love for Camden, but it was a
Brick
rough
jungle.
city.
Brick jungle.
Listen, like I still remember, Giovanni. I still remember thinking as a 5 year old and being angry, like just the snow, dark, gray, the buildings. I remember seeing a dead dog in an alleyway.
Uy.
It dije, mío, pero qué es esto? As a 5 year old, right? But then it took me a while, but then I finally realized why my mom did what she did. And I realized that it came out of a place of love, right? So for her, frankly, she took a step back. She had a pretty good job in Puerto Rico, but she was like, I want my kids to learn English because in the part of Puerto Rico that we were in, nosotros no hablamos inglés, era español todo. Entonces, for us to learn English, she had to make that move. So it was a sacrifice. Granted, she didn't understand the challenges that were going to come with a place like Camden, New Jersey. And, once I realized that that's what my mom was doing, and I was going to go in. So I promised myself that in spite of the challenges, in spite of like how hard it was to be a kid in Camden, that I was gonna make my mama proud. So, but then as I started going through the educational system, I started realizing that Camden is this unique city that's surrounded by wealth, frankly, like literally bordered by Cherry Hill, Haddingfield, like these type of schools send 7 kids to like Ivy Leagues every year, and Camden is struggling to like get resources for his kids, right? And that made me angry. It really did, but I used that anger and kind of used that as inspiration to like help myself. Just kind of shifted my mind. So I was like, okay, we'll see about this then. I'm gonna figure out how to get this done, and more importantly, how to bring others with me, if that makes sense. I can be a little wordy and verbose, so stop me.
No,
But
you're good. Tell me. So you say you had a sister, and who instilled this concept of higher education, and like who kind of set up this path to success in your mind?
honestly, I have to give credit to my mom. While she didn't know what that meant in terms of like aside from like getting good grades, y esto lo otro, she didn't really know what it meant to like what you needed to do to get access to that. But what I knew was true was that was her goal. So she didn't need to do much. Like there was something that got instilled in me by her that let me know, like, no, this is what you're about to do. This is how you're gonna make your mom proud, and like your mom's sacrifices are not gonna be in vain, right? Now, of course, I call them my angels, right? In spite of the challenges, siempre hay unos angelitos que te ponen ahí. So, for example, my third grade teacher, that was when I first went from like bilingual education to full immersion. Now you can imagine I've always been curious and talkative and all that stuff. Me being like wanting to engage in class and not knowing the words. And the teacher, Mrs. Smart, black female, would look at me and smile and say, just ask the other Puerto Rican kids in the class. Y yo decía, ¿cómo se dice estufa? ¿Cómo se dice esto? You know? And that Miss Smart just was that one of those people that really saw me and valued me and like was one of the first people that let me know in her own way, you are bomb, you are smart. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because let me tell you, the telling you otherwise, that unfortunately was more common. And then the other person that I think I have to give credit to in terms of like really instilling in me like this passion for education and shooting for the stars was the one that even put the Ivy League in my mind, right? This as white as they come, Catholic Charities, white boy from Ohio, who was my gym teacher, he just saw me, man, and he just said, hey, Kenny, have you heard of Ivy League schools? And I think you can go there. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Literally, that's how it went down. So my mom.
So then
Smart,
in high
Mr. Ritter.
and so then in high school, these seeds were placed in your mind. And then what were you like
before high school,
throughout? Okay, got
elementary
it.
school, middle school, yeah.
And then
I
you're
was
like,
that.
all right, Dartmouth College, it's in my radar. And then you visited the Ivies. Like, how did you tell us that transition?
That's a good transition because obviously like, I knew that what I knew was for sure was that college was gonna be a thing for me, right? I excelled in high school, got scored really well on the SAT, had a story to tell, and I just kind of leaned in. I didn't know if I was gonna do what I needed to do to get access, but I started thinking about like the schools that I was interested in and created a wish list. Now, I remember coming home. I used to work at White Castle.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home one day, and basically, I kid you not, Giovany, it was a stack of letters from schools, NYU, Brown, Harvard, Princeton, and one letter that came was Dartmouth. And Dartmouth letter was different because they were inviting me to go visit, and they were going to bring me up. I was like, oh, this is cool, Dartmouth. What's this? Because I didn't know how to pronounce it, of course. I was like, okay, and then I did a little research. Oh wow, well, I mean, they're bringing me up for free, so like, why not go check it out? And honestly, like, I remember going with my friend Tori, who was the only other, I would say, melanated person in my honors classes. And listen, Giovanni, I've been told I'm honest. It's never coming from a place of hate or whatever. I'm just honest, okay? And it's funny because as soon as we stepped on that campus, it was like I was I felt like I was coming home to a place that I didn't know. It took me back to Cayey and that beautiful setting. It was like I just felt like, wow, this is exactly what I envisioned college should be and could feel like, And so Tori kept like jokingly saying like, I don't know, Kenny. I see it in your eyes. I see it in your eyes. I think you're about to be a Dartmouth student. I was like, oh no, I don't know, being coy and shy. Number one, I didn't know if somebody like me could get into Dartmouth or have access to a place like Dartmouth. But yeah, I was also still exploring, right? But yeah, Dartmouth went from like not even in my radar to like basically the top of that wish list. And so yeah, that's how I found out about Dartmouth. And then actually, obviously, I went and visited in addition to like the beautiful campus, the people. There's something special about Dartmouth. I'm as Dartmouth on dying as they come. That what is it? The granite in their veins. Yo, I am the embodiment of that. And what's funny is that I know that people look at me and don't necessarily think when they think of Dartmouth, I'm not what they envision in terms of a student. And my question is, why not? Why not? Right? But yeah, like, listen, I can talk about Dartmouth forever.
Come on, show the paraphernalia there you got going there.
Show yeah, of course, my Dartmouth shirt.
That's right, and your little pint.
Yep. I was just there, Giovanni, for my 25th. I went twice this summer for my 25th and then the Gala's 40th. That's you see the Rainbow Lone
Yep.
Pine right
Yep.
here.
Yep.
And every time I left, it was like this moment of sadness, like, oh no, me voy a la realidad. No, but like, yeah, the people, the things that seem like, I don't want to say cliche, but those things really, really stood out and mattered to me as far as Dartmouth.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that they brought me up twice, as you know, for before I applied and then after I applied for Dimensions.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
so you fell in love with Dartmouth. You hit it off. It was serendipitous, and then give us a succinct view of those 4 years. How did you find community? How did you navigate yourself through the academic challenges
Mhm.
and there's so many options that Dartmouth offers.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Wow, that's a lot to think about. So what I will say that yes, I'm Dartmouth, I'm dying. Yes, I'm happy that I chose the school that I chose. My friends thought I was crazy. They were like, Dartmouth, okay, here, so isn't this like aren't you going to like the whitest state in the country? Don't you have like other options? I was very lucky. I was very fortunate and got admitted to a lot of very prestigious schools. But I was like, no, that's my school, man. I feel it, right? And then once I got there, I don't want to say the honeymoon ended, but the reality hit was like, wow, this is completely different from like anything I've ever experienced or imagined. I was like, I knew that I was placing myself in an unknown environment, but like the level of like just how much I placed myself out of my comfort zone. Listen, I'm gonna toot my own horn here. I was impressed because it was like a 180. Now, obviously, that meant that came with challenges. That came with a little bit of me asking whether I even belong there. Am I gonna be able to like compete academically, like surrounded by everybody? Frankly, there are so few people here who look like me. Of course, I took that and then got involved with admissions. I don't know if you remember, Giovanni, but I was the admissions, like me and Mika, I gotta give props to Mika too. We were the admissions people. So specifically, when I realized that there were so few Latinos, blacks, and like just others on campus, I was like, okay. So I became involved with admissions, and I especially leaned in with your class, the class of 2003. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. Me and Mika were an important part of how that class came together. And frankly, every single minority community, Black, Latino, Native, doubled. So my class was 4% Latino, your class was 8% Latino.
That's right.
And we're proud of that. You know, the other thing that was true was that, like, as you can imagine, like people who come or who are first generation like me, who don't see people who often look like that, we're kind of deer in headlights trying to figure it all out. Yes, we're brilliant. Yes, we're intelligent. And I'm saying we because this is all of us, right? We belong there. We got there for a reason. We put our candidacy forth and we were selected, right? For a reason because we belong there. And it's just like deer in headlights and so many things that we don't know because like we weren't exposed to it. We don't know, right? So I remember leaving Dartmouth after freshman year and not having an internship.
Mm.
I didn't know what to do and how to set myself up professionally. That's why I'm so big on mentorship and advising and coaching, right? Because like I remember how hard that was. I remember how hard we had to fight to get our first ever full-time advisor to Latino students. I remember how much we had to fight to get the Lalax house. And granted, we're always the last, which makes sense because we're technically the newest group of alumni, right? I remember even like being one of the founders of DALA, one of the original founders, which is ridiculous because I could still consider myself young, right? But in spite of all those challenges, what I'm grateful for is that it allowed me to kind of lean in and like take on that leadership, you know? And again, good and bad experiences. My Dartmouth experience at the end of the day was wonderful, wonderful.
So I mean, I could resonate so much with what you're saying in my own experience, right? I mean, certainly I had a little bit of prep before going to Dartmouth because I did go to Andover, Phillips Academy, and
Uh-huh.
and that helped me kind of like acclimate myself into the
Right.
academics of Dartmouth, into the environment, to what I did feel different, but
Mm-hmm.
I saw my difference as an opportunity to stand out and flex different muscles, right? I yeah, I feel like you were similar from that perspective as well. How else would you say Dartmouth, I feel like Dartmouth was pretty diverse beyond
Of
like ethnic, cultural. Like it was,
course.
it really broadened my sense of what the term diversity means.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm sorry, Giovanni. What's the question?
Did you feel the same way that
Yes.
there was a different type of diversity at play at Dartmouth?
Yes. For me, it's a yes and right because and I'm big on stories and things that I remember. You're reminding me of things, right? So that is what attracted me to Dartmouth. I knew that I was going to be surrounded by people who came from wildly different experiences from the ones I came from. And the beauty of that, I lean in those type of situations. Listen, in the past, I'm politically more liberal, like gay, whatever. Some of my best friends are like more conservative, straight, as white as they come, right? But it's that connection that you find and like leaning in and listening and vice versa, letting them know who you are to make that connection. It's okay if we come from different perspectives and way of thinking and lives, but like you might be able to show me a different point of view. You might be able to help me like see things from a different perspective. I will learn something from you because I can't possibly know what your experience is like, which is what makes you, what matters to you, what brings you passion and joy, right? Like I want to learn that, right? And I want you to learn about me. And this is where the story comes in. Like I said, I knew that I was placing myself out of my comfort zone. I realized that as important as all those types of diversity, and it's exactly what I was looking for, Giovanni, matters. What also matters is this and that representation too, right? So the story I'm about to tell you is I remember sitting freshman year in I think they call it FAFO now, or like no, not FAFO, like what is it? The food court, FOCO, something. They call it something different now. The kiddos they call it, but food court. Sitting in food court, and it happened to be me, and like I think 5 white guys. Hmm? Okay, so it's me and 5 white guys. We're having lunch, like getting to know each other. These are my friends, like from my dorm, and they start talking to me about, okay, well, Kenny, we don't understand why you always got to go to those Alianza Latina meetings, whatever. And I was just sitting there, like, just listening. I was like, Well, the first thing I'm going to say is that I chose Dartmouth. I had other options. I knew that this was the least diverse of the schools that I had to choose from. I knew that I was placing myself out of my comfort zone. I knew that it was like the least diverse part of the country, and yet I'm here. Number two, look at who I'm sitting with now. So what is the issue with taking an hour a week to go and talk to Latino students? I also got very involved with the Native American students and the Black students to talk about issues that are very real for us, right? In spite of us choosing to place ourselves in this environment, of course it's going to be hard. Of course it's going to be different, right? And so if we're spread around campus and then we're able to come together and talk about our experiences, help us with the challenges we're having, whatever, then I'm going to do that because that's also important. You feel me?
Yeah.
And so I always thought that was funny because for me it's a yes and, you know, I love all types of diversities to your point, but the diversity that I was focusing on there, right, that was not present is also as valid and as important.
I know you probably have plenty of amazing memories to pull from.
Mhm.
Any class in particular, any event in particular that sticks out for you and brings joy to your life when you think about it?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think the class that was probably most influential was probably Ed 20. I think it was called Contemporary Issues in American Education. And the story there is before I even took the class, people knew that I was from Camden, New Jersey, and one of the main books that they read had a whole chapter on my city. So people, yes, Savage Inequalities by Kozo. And so people came to us like, oh my God, Kenny, we just read about, have you heard of this class? There's a whole book about your town and like your childhood. I was like, oh, wow. So I read it and I remember being like, it's something to like be immersed in that environment. But like when you see it from somebody else's perspective, it was like, wow, it even showed me how challenging it really was to be a kid and a young person in Camden, right? My Catholic elementary school priest was quoted in the book, right? So then I ended up taking the class, and then I ended up TAing the class TA in the class, which was very uncommon at Dartmouth, by the way. We didn't have TAs, but that was one of the classes that did have TAs. And Randy Testa, who's probably my favorite professor, he was loud, eccentric, unique, like a unicorn, which are some of the things that people say about me. So I think that's why we connected. And he tapped me to like TA the class with him. And you know, he when that part of the lesson came up, he had me and oh my God, the O2 from Camden. Some of you that know me had us go. He was taking a class. I was the TA, and had us go in front of the class and basically talk. And didn't major in education, and I always knew I had a passion for education and educational access, but I wanted to explore more. So it took a while for me to come back to what I'm doing now, but I would say that was probably the most influential class and professor that I had while I was at Dartmouth.
I'm curious if you had mixed feelings as I did, going to Dartmouth and then going back to. I grew up in East Boston, which when I hear you describe Camden, I keep having similar thoughts about East Boston, and just seeing the world differences and how they clash. Right. I wonder if you had any thoughts about that. If maybe you know your family, you know, when they came to visit Dartmouth, how was their reaction? Just give us some insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my family visiting and feeling they didn't need to say they didn't feel out of place. They felt out of place, right? And even with that, they still leaned in. Like, I remember when they came for sophomore summer, I was living at the Native American house and they cooked a whole Puerto Rican meal. Y todo el mundo vino a comer, right? So there was that. Now, in terms of like, and I don't, and stop me if I'm not answering the question here, but you got me thinking about, as much as I love Dartmouth and it like prepared me to think better critically, academically, etc., socially, there's so much I got from Dartmouth. One piece of feedback and reflection that I do have, which I think is changing now, is that it didn't prepare me for what was next. Meaning, and obviously I figured it out, meaning the professional setting, right? If you think about it, somebody like me, my people came from factories and farms. ¿Qué sé yo de professionalism y como how to, I didn't know, right? And so like, that's why I'm grateful now that there's a first gen program, right? A dedicated first gen program now, not just for people of color, but first gen regardless, right? Because that is so essential, right? Yes, these kids are brilliant, smart, like superstars, and they still need this guidance. I can tell you firsthand because like it would have made my life post Dartmouth so much easier, right? And so I don't know if that answered your question, but that's something
no, and it more. I echo your comment. I've always felt 10 years behind my peers, right? Because I was lacking insight into the human capital currency at play, right? That regardless of whether I was aware or not, it was happening, right? Kind of like you said, like, oh, freshman summer, you're supposed to get an internship. I didn't get an internship. I just went back home and I worked at a local car rental shop, right? Like, no, like you're supposed to be interviewing with, you know, Chase Manhattan and McKinsey and Deloitte and like opening your, they want you to do that and they'll give you opportunities, but are like, how can I pursue something that I'm not even aware to begin with? My parents were immigrants. They had no clue. They were just trying to survive. So who will mentor me? So I've always advocated for Dartmouth not only to have this first generation into college, you know, almost like human capital class, but also I would say even just like real world skill sets around, you know, what's a FICO score, right? What's a credit score? How do you buy a home? How do you like buy your first car? How do you do a rental agreement once you graduate? You know, how do you
secure a mentor?
How do
you secure a mentor, Yovany? You know, like that would have been good, you know. And it's I won't say it's sad to hear, but I know that my story is not as uncommon, right? Which is why it's important to talk about these things. I'm glad that we're connecting there, right? Because I had no idea that you too went home after freshman year and was like, ¿qué voy a hacer ahora? Being idle, twiddling your thumbs. The other thing I'll say about the importance of like these programs, like the first generation program, which by the way was started by Jay Davis, 90, who started the Seeds program. That were like I was a mentor with the Seeds program. You might have been too, I don't know. But every summer he would bring lower income students from urban and rural communities to kind of explore Dartmouth for a few weeks in the summer. Some of the
Oh, we
students
would
became
host them.
yeah, it was called Seeds, the Seeds at Dartmouth program, right?
We would host them inside in our rooms.
Yeah, yeah. And so I I remember. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit. ¿Qué es lo que estaba diciendo?
No, the Seeds program that we were mentoring and how important it is
Oh,
to have.
and the right, and the importance of that, because the other things that were real is like I didn't fully take advantage of all the resources that were there. I could
Yeah,
have used that right center. I could have used those free tutors. And frankly, if I'm being reflective now, like yes, obviously I was there to learn, and I learned a lot. And I had to study. We had to, because otherwise, you know, it was pretty academically, and we could do it, but like you had to do some type of studying. But frankly, I think the most important part was I was a little social butterfly, man. I was like immersed in everything. And I was ubiquitous. Entonces, ¿verdad? Entonces, so that was incredibly, I think that was even a more important part for me, because those friendships that I've built and developed are still here. And still, I benefit so much from them, you know? So
that's beautiful. So you have 4 years, you graduated, and then give us a sense of your professional journey and what you're doing now.
sure. You know, I love this part of the story because it seems like boo boo all over the place, but like obviously with experience and maturity, I've been able to like see the through lines, which I'm big on through lines. So really quickly, so I did major in Spanish literature, never took a political science or public policy course or anything germane to Capitol Hill. End up working in the office of then Senator Hillary Clinton as a public policy fellow. Then spent another 2 years on Capitol Hill working on the House side. Then I went over to an organization called New America Alliance, a nonprofit whose purpose was Latino representation in Fortune 500 C-suites and boards. Then I guess it was a natural thing. I was like, okay, what's next? And you know, I decided to apply to business school, take my GMAT, apply to business school. Ended up at Wharton for my MBA. Got an MBA in finance. Unfortunately, I graduated right when the world was just not happy. 2007, 2008. They think Bear Stearns going down, Lehman Brothers going down, like bank bailouts. My classmates freaking out. And then for somebody like me, who was frankly a non-traditional, never had corporate experience, you know, never had like finance experience, it was harder to find a job. But honestly, the blessing there, because there's always a blessing and a silver lining, was that it really allowed me to take that step back and realize that while I majored in finance and I could do it, I didn't love it, right? And so then what do you love? What are you good at? So, and I frankly kept coming back to storytelling. It's like, okay, well, what can you tell stories? Hollywood. So I decided very spontaneously to move to LA. I cold called anybody who was Latino, Black, Dartmouth affiliated, anybody I could. Long story short, I end up at Cayey, which is the top talent agency. Then after that, I went shift into what I really wanted to do, which was the storytelling. So I went to the development departments, first at Summit Entertainment, the Twilight people, and then at Sony Pictures. We were kind of like we're the ones that greenlight and manage the projects after we greenlight. So almost like internal producers, right? And then I realized that I was enjoying my volunteer work a lot more than I was enjoying my paid work. And so that made me take another step back and be like, well, you do love storytelling and you want to have an impact here in Hollywood, but you know, you're enjoying this college access mentoring of these kids a lot more than what you're doing at the studios. And so that kind of catalyzed and prompted my move to back to Camden, New Jersey, where I started doing education and college access work. Now I'm kind of taking it worldwide. I'm an independent admissions consultant, and we're leaning in.
Well, I saw that.
I'm literally taking it worldwide.
I saw that you worked at KIP, in Jersey for quite a while there, and
Mhm.
you were exactly doing that. A lot of career planning, a lot of college prep.
Yeah,
It seems like you did pay your dues over there, and now you're branching out on your own and being an
yeah,
entrepreneur. What
yeah.
precipitated that?
Okay, so that's a really good question. And my last boss told me that I can be a little honest, but I don't know how else to be. I think, frankly, and this is unfortunate because this happened throughout my career. It's just this lack of like humanity and people first mindset and the importance of EQ and kindness, right? In the work settings, right? Now, we don't know each other very well, but I'm an empath. One of the most common descriptors is before my intelligence or anything, it's like, I love how kind you are. I love how positive you are. Now, those things, unfortunately, I do see them as my real powers and strengths now, but like they can also backfire, right?
Yeah,
People are threatened sometimes by those types of things, right? Um, and it's unfortunate because that was even true at KIP. So it was time for me to leave, right? Now, you know what keeps me up at night, Yovany? The kids that I left.
mm,
And I'm gonna tell you a very quick story and why this keeps me up. I had a kid that I was his third grade teacher, and now this kid is a rising junior. Okay. When he was about to go to high school, he saw me and said, Mr. Reyes, because I was his third grade teacher. Blah, 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 blah. And Mr. Reyes, I'm on the spectrum, right? And I kind of smiled and said, yeah, I know. I know, that's cool. Now, this kid is brilliant, Boricua, about to be valedictorian, right? And so he and his group of friends, when they were sophomores last year, took the PSAT, all of them scored in the top 10% nationally. Okay. And of course, I'm like excited. I geek out and nerd out. It's like, oh, let me go talk to the kids. I'm so excited about this. They're like, congratulations. You know what their reaction was? What? Really? I scored that well, that high? Giovanni, it was like they lit up. They had no idea of how well they had scored, right? And those are the kind of things that kind of fall by the wayside. And I fear that there's nobody there now that's doing those little touch points that matter, right? It's not
to
necessarily a part
celebrate.
of your description. Yeah. It's not necessarily a part of your job description, but it's so essential, right? So what I will say about KIP is that I'm grateful because I learned a lot. The impact that I had on the families is undeniable. My outcomes are undeniable. And even to this day, I still have some of the families call me to like whenever they need advice, they still call me. I'm the first person they call. But more importantly, they let me know that like, Mr. Reyes, you don't understand how much of an impact you had, not just on our kids, but our entire family. And that's just beautiful, right? Um, so I'm struggling a little bit with that now. And I think you're seeing that in the moment because I feel like I'm abandoning my kids, but it's also like I'm big on like helping especially young people figure out not just who they are, but how that shines in the world, if that makes
Yeah,
sense, right?
yeah.
And that's
So
regardless. Mhm.
so right now you're doing a missions consultant. So what does that mean?
That means I created my own website. That means I am sponsored by a company, but that means I'm really leaning into my entrepreneurship, making connections. I have like a few clients now, and they came from like genuine connections. That means doing a
Is it high
discovery
school
call.
students and like parents of high school students are
High
like,
school
hey,
students. Exactly. And
got
so
it.
I start as early as eighth grade, which I know sounds crazy, but in terms of like helping kids really figure things out and like start their narrative, which will eventually become their college application. That's why I like to start as early as possible. So right now I have like a few juniors, a couple seniors. I'm trying to get more younger
But
kids as well because the sooner I start with them, the better.
but basically the decision is made by the parent. The parent goes like, hey, I recognize that I need help with this, and I'm gonna hire Mr. Reyes
See,
to, I love that he is Dovo Ivy. I love his diversity of professional. I love his energy. I love his mentorship. I want to hire him to really prune my kid and give him the best probabilities of pursuing a path that aligns
yeah.
with their interests.
And here's one other point that I'm going to add about this is because like some parents get this, and that's why they seek me in particular. But other parents, it's harder to think about this. Just like I was talking about how things like the softer skills are always celebrated or valued in the work settings, right? Um, when I help the kids, I help them see how basically EQ is as important as IQ. As hard as it is to get into these schools, so many kids are already like viable, right? They're impressive. So what else? So I'm impressive and generous. I'm
Yeah.
impressive and kind. And that's what I help kids see. Now it has to be them. If it's a kid that's not their jam, they're not kind. But I try to figure out all those other things that they bring aside from like the academic prowess or like just their raw intelligence, right? Because we
Yeah.
all have that. And then like if you think about it, Giovanni, like in the changing world with AI and automation and other stuff, and this is what I'm saying this because like I know I have these things too, but like those softer skills are ever more important.
There are.
That people, yes, as we start, that's the kind of like thing that I think people are gonna be looking for in the future. And so now I'm noticing that like that is something that is my power. That's something that I shine at, in addition, obviously, to the professional background, the educational background. But I'm really gonna lean in with that because I've been getting a lot of sorry, one second. I've been getting a lot of contacts or people reaching out about not just not having me work with their kids, but also Kenny, let's create a series of workshops at the schools that I work at. Kenny, let's think about this panel. Kenny, like my kids in Spain, I know a lot of kids in Spain that are doing that, like need this type of help and specifically want the knowledge that you have about managing that process in the U.S. and U.S. schools, right? So that's all like of what I'm doing now. Basically, I'm just leaning
Yeah.
into my own.
Yeah. No, I bet you're pretty effective at it again because your energy is contagious. I've always found you to be very contagious
Thank you
in a
so much.
positive way. But you're also very practical, right? You're very introspective. You're able to break down the puzzle into digestible pieces, and then like, hey, let's align them so that you gain speed and are able to quickly reach the goal that you want to. Um, I wonder how your definition of éxito, success, has changed.
Muy buena pregunta. Muy buena pregunta, and it has changed. Obviously, it might have been the same with you, and like, the passion that my mom had in doing what she did. For me, success meant achievement. Whether it was academic, career, whatever. Obviously, you're probably gonna get a sense of what I'm gonna say next in terms of like how I see success now. For me now, success is yes, those things, but like honestly, joy, bringing joy to others, positivity, humanity, like regardless of what you're doing. And, it is okay to be powerful and empathetic at the same time. It's okay to be. I'm trying to look at different things like a boss and like people first minded. Like it's okay to show up as authentically yourself because that's when like the beauty starts, right? Like yeah. I don't know if that answered your question, but
No,
my
it does. Uh, let me add a different color to this.
okay.
Because the concept of authenticity it's typically brought up, but I think there's a helpful way of being authentic. There's a toxic way of being authentic, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if your authentic self is your very own kind person, then don't be your authentic self.
Wow. That's a
Right?
good point. People are different.
You know what I mean? So, but for example, when it comes to like corporate America, right? Like I've had the opportunity to work at very different environments, and even though they all say bring your authentic self, no, not really. I have to understand that this is a very specific corporate culture. The way people dress, the way people address each other, the way the levers and buttons are pushed, and I'm the one who has to go in there and adapt without losing myself, right? Without losing who I am. And then, of course, there's going to be opportunities where I could interject my cubaneo and my food and all this stuff, and that's perfect. I wonder if you wrestle with that yourself.
100%, 100%, right? Because I struggle. Some people say to be fake, and I understand that. Like, I'm definitely at a point in my life now where I'm gonna show up as authentically myself. Number one, but I agree with you that like people talk the talk, but don't necessarily always walk the walk when it comes to that. And how sad, how sad, because think about how much better a work environment would be, how much more productive and collaborative we would be if we would just be honest and be ourselves. Like, not be so diplomatic just to be diplomatic, or like political just to be political. Just be honest. Sorry.
Let me add my let me add my perspective as a parent. Okay, as a parent. So as a father, it's very important that I define for my kids the rules of the house. Right? Like, no, you cannot come in here and do whatever you want. Like, no, there are rules, right? And there's a rule set by myself and my wife, right? This is the structure. Here's the culture. Here are the traditions. Here are the rules. And it's almost kind of intuitive. The more clear I am with my kids about the rules of the house, the more freedom they have, because they understand the parameters in which to excel and push against to, right? And I would equate the same thing happens in whatever corporate America or whatever role you go into, right? It's like, hey, have somebody give you clarity on the rules of the house, the culture, so that you can play within them and be your authentic self. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. Yes, obviously, like, it doesn't mean going there like portarse como un loco y todo eso, pero like, yeah, I'm just big on like authenticity and honesty, and it's like it's gotten me. You're right, it has gotten me in trouble in the past. It has gotten me in trouble for a variety of reasons, like because some people don't like it, and honestly, the other thing is some people are threatened. Imagine that honesty and like authenticity with like the fact that I do, again, to my own horn, happen to be the type of person that like connects really well with people, all types of people. So that's threatening. And the corporate, whatever, what do we call it? Corporate
ethos, whatever
we're talking about. That's also, I'm going to call it mainstream. You know what I mean by mainstream, right? And so I'm naturally going to push against that, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And I'm hoping that there's more people out there that will push against that, So yeah. But I'm excited because inevitably, with the changing demographics in this country, I know there's a lot happening. Like, it's inevitable.
Yeah, I wish when I started my corporate journey, I understood that there was a face value message that was being shared.
Yeah.
Hey, be your authentic self. But then there was a reality of the chessboard that I needed to play, right? Yeah. And I did not see that. I didn't get those mentors, right, to like warn me, like, no, I know that I know they're saying that, but that's not accurate. You have to understand the culture. You have to understand how things operate, and you're the one who has to adjust to it if you want to thrive in that specific environment. Hey, you can't do it. You don't like it. Guess what? Go somewhere else, right? Find the thing that aligns with you. But I think throughout that entire, complexity of it, it's okay. Like, my identity was never a risk, right? Yeah. Like, I was never going to lose my sense of identity because I was playing by different rules, right? I just wish it wasn't as confusing, right? Like, oh, you got to be this. Well, I am being this, but it's not translating to promotions and rewards, you know? That's confusing,
100%.
Hey, good reflection with you, Kenny. As we wind out here our dialogue, any last nuggets of wisdom that you want to share with anybody who might be joining us today?
I mean, yeah, obviously I'm big on like we've gotten to authenticity and just lean in and be yourself. I think so I love dancing, right? I love dancing. I get lost in the music. Y frankly, I got about to toot my horn again. Pero I'm the type of dancer that will go fully in and get lost, and then like the DJs, the bartenders, and the others will come to me and they say, "Papa, you left everything on that dance floor." And I know that. That's one of my strengths. I'm a really, really good dancer, right? So I look at life like that, right? Like, so the beat changes and the rhythm changes, and instead of stopping, right, you kind of go with the flow. And the beauty of that is that it allows you to potentially show another part of your awesomeness, right? So as life gets complicated, as life gets hard, which you will, especially if you come from a completely different experience or reality and stepping into something that's again completely different. Um, Appreciate those moments and like leverage them as opportunities to develop and grow. And like just remember that your authentic self is like good, and that because of that, and as soon as you keep landing in that, you will be good because of that. That's my thing.
I love that. I love that. I can empathize with what you're saying, and that's a fantastic way to wrap up this dialogue. Anybody who's out
Oh
there,
my
thank
God, I
you.
have really so much more to say about Dartmouth, but yeah, I get it. We've been talking about
Thank
an
you.
hour now.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Around the Girdle Earth. If today's conversation sparked a memory or gave you something to think about, leave us a thoughtful reflection in the comment section. And please share this episode with a classmate or another fellow alumni. It's a very easy way to keep the Dartmouth spirit alive in this chaotic digital age. So until next time, stay curious, stay green, and keep roaming this beautiful girdle earth we call home. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you, Giovanni, and hi, everybody.